I guess we're live.
Let's start with this saying, spell your first and last name. Give me your title.
Sure, I'm William Brown. I'm a business intelligence architect at Microsoft.
All right, what does that mean?
So as a business intelligence architect, I get to go in, talk to customers, find out how they're using data, how they might want to use data, and give them tools and strategies and thoughts on how they might take that and apply that information to solving business problems. That's kind of my job, and it happens to be the best job at Microsoft.
Okay, that sounds reasonable.
That's nice.
Okay.
That's good.
So you were here why? Where are we and what are you doing here today?
Well, today I was lucky. I got invited to speak as part of the keynote. I got to talk about SharePoint and Excel. Not exactly SQL topics, but SQL is so embodied in the SharePoint and Excel experience to enable BI functionality. We thought it belonged here because organizing your data is great. We got to have our data in a place we can get it, but then we got to give it to users so they can act on it. They can use Excel, which all the users love. Very familiar with the tool. We've given all kinds of new features in there to let users just exploit the power of Excel, and then they can take it, share it up to SharePoint, let other people collaborate on it. So it's really about pushing that kind of business intelligence and reporting functionality and the analysis closer to the business people because they know what they need. And letting IT manage the data side of things because they know how to manage that. This is the best of both worlds.
So what are people asking you about?
Wow, what aren't they asking me about? They're asking me about how to get access to the data. That's a big topic. You know, the data's locked away in different stores. How do they get access to it? How do they bring it into Excel effectively and repeatedly? How does Power Pivot, that in-memory database that we have in Excel now, help them solve their problems? And once they've done it, what can they do next? How do they take it? How do they visualize it? How do they communicate it effectively? What are the best practices to make it discoverable in SharePoint and collaborating on it inside SharePoint? All of those are huge topics.
Hold on a sec.
So, SharePoint, other questions people are talking about is, how does big data fit in this strategy? How do we access all the volumes of information that we're collecting? How do we make that data accessible? How do we mash it up with other data sources? What are the ways we can use predictive analytics and other kinds of statistical analysis to extract as much value out of the data? You know, these days, we have to squeeze every competitive advantage we have, and data is a big part of it. I mean, look what Amazon does or Target does, and these companies, they have all these volumes of data, and they're making money off their data. You know, when you're running at a few % margin, if you can earn a little bit extra on every transaction, or if you can sell to one extra customer, that's all profit. And that's where the value of the data comes in. And that's the best part of the job, is when a company sits down, pulls that data out of their system, and then figures out that they can actually be more efficient with it, whether they're cutting costs or increasing sales or just making the employees just a little bit more effective. There's a lot of satisfaction and a lot of passion there.
So is that what people aren't doing all these days, extracting the data?
I don't think they're good at extracting it.
So people don't hear me.
Okay.
So,
Oh, okay, that's an important point. So extracting data is one of the problems. It's getting access to it. How do I get access to all this rich data that's locked away in a way that's effective? And maybe that means pulling that data into the parallel data warehouse so I have easy access to it. Does it mean setting up a data mart? Does it mean working with IT so they can find the information so they know what's out there? Those are all the kind of core questions people have to get to before they can start doing their work of analyzing the data. And we need to bridge that gap so users, they have the tools now they have to get at the information to leverage those tools.
So is there still a gap between the understanding and how to use the tools? Because it sounds like that's what we have. We have the tools now, and part of this event is to explain that.
Right. There's always a gap. There's always more demand. I mean, this is one of the big fallacies. People get worried that a technology is going to make them, useless. It doesn't happen because the demand for information is always going to exceed what we can do and the information we have at our disposal. You give me, a few gigabytes of data, I'm going to want a terabyte of data. You give me real-time analysis, I want real-time analysis over more data and external data. We really, then we discover there's new ways of examining the data and envisioning the data that we hadn't thought of before. The richer the environment gets, whether it's tool sets or data or just new ways of analyzing it, the problems just become that much richer for us to try to examine. So yeah, I think there's always a gap between what we want to do and what we can do, and we want to use events like this to kind of bridge those gaps, to bring people up to what they can do today, because no one has the time to keep up with it all. So these educational events are a fabulous way polishing your tool sets, figuring out what you can do differently, learning new skills and techniques, and then taking them back and explaining it. It's really hard to discover that when you're working 40 and 50 hours a week, to take time to sharpen the saw and get a little bit better at your job.
That was the money shot. You have something else?
No, you're awesome.